You're standing in a field at last light. The crop is ready, the sky is turning, and the machine that cost you more than your first house just went quiet. A screen glows on the dash. It doesn't tell you what broke. It tells you to call the dealer. And the dealer is closed until morning. I have lived that exact moment, and it changed everything I believed about the iron I owned. Here is the truth I paid to learn. The biggest American equipment brands stopped selling you machines a long time ago. They started renting you access to machines you already bought, and now buyers across Europe are walking away from American iron for the very same reason smart American farmers are, and almost nobody is saying it out loud. I am going to show you how the trap was built, who got rich off your trust, and the one thing you can do this week to claw your independence back. I will point you to a federal lawsuit filed in January of 2025 and a law that went live in Colorado on the 1st of January 2024 that most owners have never heard of. And if you already own a lockdown machine sitting in your shed right now, stay with me, because the way out I found works for the iron you already have, not just the tractor you might buy next. Let me take you back to a Tuesday in August 2019. I was on a leased quarter section outside a little town in eastern Nebraska running a late model combine I had signed 6 years of my life away for. The header choked, a code flashed, and the machine derated itself down to a crawl. I had the wrench in my hand. I knew the part. I could not clear the code. The machine would not let me, and that was the night I understood I did not own it. I was renting it from people who lived 4 states away. So let me start where the trap starts, because it does not start with a broken part. It starts with a lie about who is in control. When you buy a modern tractor or a modern excavator, you think you are buying steel and hydraulics and a diesel engine. You are not. You are buying a computer on wheels, and the computer answers to somebody else. There are controllers all through that machine, little sealed boxes the manufacturers call control units, and every one of them talks to a central brain. When something goes wrong, that brain throws a code, and here is the part they do not put in the brochure. On the biggest brands, clearing that code and getting the machine back to full power often requires a piece of software that only the dealer is allowed to have. They call it a diagnostic tool. I call it a leash. I learned the name of the leash the hard way. On the green machines, it is a program called Service ADVSOR. On other brands, it has other names, but it does the same job. It reads the machine, clears the faults, and reauthorizes the controllers after a repair. Without it, you can bolt in a brand new genuine part with your own 2 hands, and the machine will still refuse to run because the new part has not been blessed by the software. The technical word they use is calibration or pairing. The real word is permission. I want you to sit with that. You can own the part. You can own the tool. You can own the skill. And the machine will still sit dead in your yard until a man in a company truck drives out, plugs in a laptop, and charges you for the privilege of turning your own property back on. That is where the money starts to bleed, and the bleeding is worse than you think. The United States Public Interest Research Group, a consumer research organization, dug into this and put numbers on it. Their researchers estimated that farmers were losing enormous sums every year to repair restrictions and forced downtime, and that a huge share of the repair market had been funneled straight into dealer service bays by design. When your machine can only be fixed by one authorized shop, that shop sets the price, sets the schedule, and sets the weight. And in harvest season, the weight is the weapon. Let me put that in terms I actually lived. That night in 2019, the dealer could not get a technician to me for 2 days. 2 days, in the middle of a harvest window with rain in the forecast. When the technician finally came, he was on my machine for less than 1 hour. He plugged in the laptop, cleared the code, ran a calibration, and typed in a few numbers. The invoice came a week later. It was several $100s for the labor and the trip charge, and I had done the actual repair myself before he ever arrived. He charged me to press the buttons I was not allowed to press, but the invoice was not the real cost. The real cost was the grain I lost when the rain came before I could finish. The real cost was measured in acres, not dollars on a service ticket. And that is the thing they count on you not calculating. They know the downtime hurts worse than the bill. They know a grounded machine in September is a loaded gun pointed at your whole year. So they built a system where the fastest way to get running again is to stop fighting and pay whatever they ask. That is not a repair business. That is leverage. Now, here is where I need to be careful, because when I first started telling this story, I sounded like a man with a grudge. So let me give you the documents, because the documents do not have a grudge. They have dates. For years, the manufacturers said there was no problem at all. They said farmers could fix their own equipment just fine. Then, on the 8th of January, 2023, the largest of the green brands signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation. A memorandum of understanding is a fancy phrase for a promise on paper. In that document, the manufacturer agreed to give farmers and independent shops access to the tools, the software, and the documentation needed to make repairs. Now stop and think about what that signature admitted. You do not sign a promise to provide repair access if repair access was never being withheld. That signature was a confession dressed up as a favor. And within months, other manufacturers signed their own versions of the same promise. I remember reading that news and feeling something between relief and rage. Relief, because it looked like a door had opened. Rage, because it told me every hard time I had been given for a decade was deliberate, and now they wanted a pat on the back for cracking the door they had bolted shut. But here is why that promise was not the exit, and why I kept looking. That memorandum was not a law. It was voluntary. It had no real teeth. The manufacturer could walk away from it whenever it pleased, and the fine print carved out plenty they still would not let you touch. It was a pressure valve, released right when the heat was building, so the politicians would ease off, and the farm groups would declare victory and go home, so the trap did not spring open. It just loosened enough to keep you from chewing your own leg off. And that told me the people who built this thing were not done fighting, which meant I could not be done either. Therefore, I went looking for who actually forced that door open in the first place, because it was not the manufacturers being generous. It was pressure. And pressure has names and dates. The first real crack came from farmers who refused to shut up. There was a Nebraska man, a farmer and inventor, who spent years hauling this fight into state houses when almost nobody in the press cared. Ordinary owners started standing up at hearings holding their repair invoices like exhibits in a trial, and slowly the story got too big to bury. Then the government finally moved. In May of 2021, the Federal Trade Commission, the agency that polices unfair business practices, released a report to Congress called Nixing the Fix. In that report, the Commission looked at repair restrictions across industries and found there was scant evidence to justify locking owners out of fixing their own products. Scant evidence. That is government language for we looked, and their excuses do not hold up. That report lit the fuse, and it kept burning because the abuse was too well documented to ignore. The lawsuits came next, and this is where you feel the ground shift. Farmers filed antitrust cases arguing the biggest brand had illegally cornered the repair market for its own machines, forcing owners into authorized dealers and inflating what they paid. Those cases got consolidated into a larger action in federal court in the Northern District of Illinois. Antitrust is the body of law that is supposed to stop a company from choking off competition. And the heart of these cases was simple. When the only people allowed to fully fix your machine are the people who sold it to you, that is not a market. That is a toll booth. But the moment that told me the tide had truly turned came in January of 2025. The Federal Trade Commission, joined by state attorneys general, filed suit against the largest farm equipment maker in the country, accusing it of driving up repair costs by keeping essential software tools out of the hands of farmers and independent shops. When the nation's top consumer protection agency drags an equipment giant into federal court over the exact leash that killed my harvest window, you are no longer a man with a grudge. You are a man with a case. So the villain came into focus. This was never about one bad dealer or one grumpy technician. This was a design. Somebody in a boardroom looked at the service department and saw not a cost, but a fortune. They realized the machine sold once, but the repairs sold forever. And the tighter they controlled the repairs, the more forever was worth. And that stung me, because I love American machines. But before I go further, I want to mention something that might save you years of hard lessons. Everything I have described in this video, the lock software, the dealer leverage, the legal fights, and the practical way out, I went deeper on all of it in my book, Fixed or Owned. It is called Break the Lock, and it walks you through the full picture, how the trap was engineered, what the law now gives you, and exactly how to take your independence back machine by machine. If you want the complete roadmap in your hands, the details are in the description below. Now, back to the story of how Europe did the math and what it means for every owner still holding a lockdown machine. For a long time, the American brands were the kings of the export yard. Big, powerful, familiar iron, shipped all over the world. But something started to change. European buyers, both farmers and construction outfits, began turning away from certain American machines, and the software leash was a big reason why. Over there, the culture around owning a machine is different, and the laws are moving faster. The European Union has been pushing right to repair rules across product categories, treating repairability as a right of the buyer, not a favor from the seller. When you build your whole business model around locking the owner out, and you try to sell into a market that is writing laws to forbid exactly that, you have a problem. There is also the matter of who the Europeans can buy instead. Because Europe is not short on serious iron. They have their own giants, and those giants built their reputations on machines a competent owner could keep running. The German brands, the Italian brands, the Scandinavian brands, the British construction names. Now, I will be honest with you, because I promised I would be. Some of those European makers have crept toward the same lockdown software model, chasing the same easy service money. This is not a fairy tale where one side wears white hats. But the pressure in Europe to keep machines open is stronger, the repair networks are broader, and the buyer has more places to run. So when a European contractor looks at an American machine that will strand him unless he calls one authorized dealer and then looks at a homegrown machine his own mechanic can service, the American machine loses. Not on horsepower, on freedom. They stopped buying our iron because our iron came with a landlord. And that stung me because I love American machines. I grew up on them. My father ran them and his father before him. Watching the rest of the world walk away from that iron because the companies got greedy with the software is a special kind of heartbreak. But it is also the loudest proof I can give you that the leash is real. When paying customers on another continent vote with their wallets, you cannot call it a coincidence and you cannot call it a grudge. Now I need to turn and talk straight to one person, because I know you are out there watching this on the couch after a long day, and a voice in the back of your head is saying, this is all fine for the guy shopping for his next machine, but you are stuck. You already signed. The lockdown machine is already in your shed. You feel like this video is a door you can see but cannot walk through. This next part is built for you, the one who feels trapped. Stay right here, because I was you, and I got out without buying anything new. The first thing I did was stop treating the dealer's diagnostic monopoly like a law of nature, because it is not. Here is what almost nobody tells the owner of an already locked machine. On several of the major brands, the very diagnostic software that dealers use to hold you hostage has quietly been made available to the public. You can buy a subscription to it yourself. On the biggest green brand, the customer version of that dealer software has been purchasable for a yearly fee for a few years now. It lets you read the machine, pull the trouble codes, see what the technician sees, and understand what is actually wrong before anyone drives out to your farm. The first time I got my own hands on that software, it was like someone turned the lights on in a room I had been groping around in for years. Suddenly the codes were not a mystery. I could tell a real failure from a sensor throwing a fit. I could walk into that conversation with the dealer knowing exactly what the machine needed, which meant they could no longer invent problems or pad the ticket. Just knowing what the codes mean shifts the power back to your side of the table. The second thing I did was find my people. Independent repair shops that specialize in the big brands exist, and they are hungry for your business precisely because the dealers treated you like a captive. There are also online owner communities where farmers trade the exact procedures, the part numbers, the workarounds, and the calibration steps that the manuals hide. On the forums and the repair sites, owners have posted step-by-step guides for jobs the dealers swore only they could touch. Some of the most valuable knowledge I have ever gotten cost me nothing but the humility to ask a stranger who had already solved my problem. The third thing I did was start buying the documentation itself. Under the pressure of those lawsuits and that memorandum, more service manuals, more diagnostic guides, and more parts information have been pried loose and made available. When you have the actual service manual, the real one, not the watered-down operator booklet, you would be amazed how much of the fear evaporates. Most of what they told me was too complicated for a farmer turned out to be a torque spec and a sequence of steps written down on a page they did not want me to have. And the fourth thing, the biggest thing, was a decision. I decided that from that day forward, when I bought iron, repairability would sit at the same table as horsepower and price. I started asking the question out loud in the dealership. Can I get the diagnostic tool? Can I buy the service manual? Can an independent shop fix this, or only you? You watch how fast a salesman's smile tightens when you ask who is allowed to fix the thing after you have paid for it. So if you are the trapped owner, here is your ladder out, and every rung is available right now. Buy the customer diagnostic subscription for your brand if it exists. Find the independent shop before you have an emergency, not during one. Get the real service documentation into your hands. And make repair access a deal breaker on the next purchase so you never sign your way back into the cell. But knowing the ladder is there is not the same as knowing the one move that changes the game the most. Because there is a single development buried in a place most owners never look that quietly rewrote the rules in your favor, no matter which state you farm in, and almost nobody is talking about it. This is the thing I promised you at the start, the secret way out. On the 25th of April, 2023, the governor of Colorado signed a bill into law. It was called the Consumer Right to Repair Agricultural Equipment Act. It took effect on the 1st of January, 2024, and it was the first law of its kind in the entire country. It did what the memorandum only promised to do, but with teeth this time. It requires manufacturers to provide owners and independent repair shops with the parts, the tools, the software, the diagnostic capability, and the documentation needed to repair agricultural equipment on fair and reasonable terms. Now here is the part that is genuinely buried, and here is why it matters to you, even if you have never set foot in Colorado. Manufacturers build their software and their support systems for scale. It is expensive and clumsy to build one version of your repair access for one state and a lockdown version for everyone else. Once a law like Colorado's forces a manufacturer to open the diagnostic tools, the documentation, and the software to owners in that state, that capability now exists. It is built, it is running. And the pressure, both practical and legal, pushes it outward. When one state pries the door open and proves the sky does not fall, the neighboring states move to pass their own versions, and the manufacturer's argument that this is impossible collapses because they are already doing it right next door. And Colorado was just the first domino. Since that law, state house after state house has taken up agricultural and equipment right to repair bills. The pattern the advocates figured out is the real weapon. You do not have to beat these companies in every state at once. You break the model in one state, the tools become available, the proof piles up, and the whole wall starts to crumble. So here is what you actually do this week. First, look up whether your state has a right to repair bill in motion, because there is a strong chance it does, and your voice at a hearing or a single call to your state representative carries weight. These companies genuinely fear. The whole reason that memorandum got signed in 2023 was that lawmakers started moving. Ordinary owners showing up is what made them flinch. Second, use the access that already exists because of Colorado and because of that federal lawsuit. Go find the customer diagnostic subscription for your brand and buy it before your next breakdown, not after. That tool exists and is for sale today in large part because farmers made staying closed more expensive than opening up. Third, and this is the move that kept the whole thing alive when the corporations wanted it dead, join the owner networks that are trading this knowledge. The Right to Repair Coalition, the farmer-led groups, the online repair communities. They are the ones who kept the documents in circulation, who tracked every bill, who cataloged every dealer abuse until the FTC could not ignore it. The way out existed all along. It was written in fine print and buried in State House dockets. A handful of stubborn farmers and repair advocates kept it alive when it would have been easier to give up, and now you can walk straight through the door they held open. That is the escape. Not a fantasy about smashing the big companies. A real, boring, powerful set of moves. Buy the tool, get the documents, find your shop, back the law in your state, and when the day comes to buy again, treat the freedom to fix it as the most important number on the sticker, whether that machine is green, red, or comes off a boat from Europe. The Europeans figured out that a machine you cannot fix is a machine you do not really own. That is why they stopped buying certain American iron. And the American farmer who figures out the same thing is the one who stops paying rent on his own property. Here's what I want you to carry out of this. The freedom to fix the thing you paid for was never theirs to take. They just counted on you being too tired, too rushed, and too alone to take it back. You are none of those things anymore. You are the kind of owner who refuses to rent what he already bought. You are the kind of man who reads the code himself, calls the independent shop, and looks the salesman in the eye and asks who is allowed to fix it. That is not being difficult. That is being free. That is the whole point of owning the iron in the first place. Now I want to hear from you, because this fight runs on real stories, not mine alone. Tell me about your worst dealer invoice. The one that made your stomach drop. What was the machine? What was the repair you could have done yourself? And what did they charge you to press the buttons you were not allowed to press? Put it in the comments right now, the brand and the dollar amount, because when 1,000 of us lay those invoices side by side, that is the exhibit no company can wave away. And tell me where you are watching from, because this trap crossed an ocean, and I want to see how far this reaches. If you have made it this far, you are not just a viewer. You are part of a growing crowd of owners taking their iron back one machine at a time. Stick around, because next I am going to break down which specific brands and models are the easiest for an independent owner to keep running for the next 30 years, and which ones will have you back on the leash the day the warranty ends. You do not want to buy your next machine before you see that list. The crop is still ready. The sky is still turning. But the next time that screen lights up and tells you to call the dealer, you are going to smile, plug in your own laptop, and get back to work. Because you finally know the way out. And nobody can lock a door you already learned to open. You know that moment I lived through? The machine dead in the field, waiting on a dealer? This video was just the overview. Inside the circle, I keep going with the dealer lockout playbook, brand by brand. You can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. Folks like you already belong in here with us. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime. One click. If this helped make sense of things, do subscribe and stay right here with me. I have more stories like this one waiting for you, so let us keep exploring together.